When I was a child, waiting for Christmas felt like an eternity for me. These days, when Christmas comes around, I'm much more like, wow, this was a year already? When did all the time pass? It's strange, isn't it? The older we get, the more our life seems to speed up. As adults, we rush through our moments, we rush through our years. It's like it's nothing. So I was wondering whether we couldn't take control over time and slow down the speed of our life to actually live it. As a psychologist, I would like to share with you 5 steps based on science that you might want to try out to slow down the speed of your life to get back to the speed you might still know from childhood. Step 1 is what I actually call waking up the inner child. Think of a threatening moment like a car accident or falling down from a house. In moments like these, people commonly report that everything turns into slow motion. Now, to understand why, scientists made people fall from 31-meter height into a net. Think of falling down 31 meters into a net, but it's still a pretty threatening moment, right? So while falling, people held a special device in their hand, showing random digits at very high speed. Too fast, actually, for the human eye to see. One could only see them when filmed in slow motion. Now, the assumption was, when people fall down and everything really turns into slow motion, then they should be able to recognize the numbers. But this is not what happened. People weren't able to see the numbers. However, they overestimated the duration of their fall by 36% on average, which is quite a lot. So the perception of the speed of time is a function of retrospection. In extreme moments, our brain has to deal with an overload of information. So what it does is that it makes room. It needs space to store all this information in big memories. And this is why our perception of time is stretched. For many people, this happens a lot when they are kids, when they are young, because when we are young, this is the time of doing things for the first time. And doing things for the first time, makes our brain work, because there's a lot of new information in it. Think of your first bike ride, or your first play at school, or maybe your first kiss. My first kiss was quite a lot of work for my brain, so I would never forget this horrible moment. Now, when was the last time you did something for the first time? For me, it's been a while. As adults, we think too big when we think of doing things for the first time. But you don't have to climb Mount Everest. If you wake up the inner child in you and try to see the world through the eyes of a child, you will find small things everywhere around you. So like cooking a 3-course menu that you never tried out, or take an all different way to go to work, or start volunteering in a charity where you have to do something that is all different from your normal job. Kick your brain into action and try to do something for the first time today. Step 2 is doing things for the last time. In my podcast, I interviewed Steve, and Steve survived a suicide attempt. He was pretty depressed, so on a Friday night in a bar, he decided to kill himself within 3 weeks. He needed this time because he wanted to do various things one last time, like breathing fresh air, eating a last cup of ice cream, or saying goodbye. Today, Steve is a pretty happy man. He doesn't think about suicide anymore. But he still remembers every last thing he did. He could still tell you about every second of the last cup of ice cream he ate, and especially the last day, the last person he met. So what I learned from Steve is the hidden power of doing things for the last time. And I think that we can all use this power without even thinking about suicide at all. Breaking routines is what we should do to slow down the speed of life. Let's say that, for example, you eat your favorite ice cream one last time for a year. You spend one last evening with Netflix for, let's say, 6 months at least. Sometimes what could make the difference is not to start something new, but breaking a habit and do something for the last time, at least the last time for a while. Step 3 is to stick to your own moments. All human beings are born with a natural hunger for making experiences. And this is why we love to scroll through Instagram, for example, or use any kind of social media. Because what we get here is kind of an all-you-can-eat buffet of high-contrast experiences of other people, strong moments of other people. But these moments don't work like our own for our brain. Think of it like junk food, maybe. When you eat a Big Mac, what you get is a lot of calories, but not the nutrients your body actually asked for. And this is why you stay hungry and always want more. So it's the same with social media. The next time that you scroll through an infinite scrolling feed of whatever kind of news site or social media site, be conscious that you are right now stuffing yourself with high-calorie experiences of other people that will actually leave you empty. Now, I know it's pretty difficult, or maybe even impossible, at least for me, to leave or quit social media. So what I did is that I muted the 10 profiles I used to check most frequently. It's just a first step. But less social media does not only free up time, it keeps you hungry for making your own experiences. Now, step 4 is the push of boredom. The class I hated most in school was chemistry. Sitting there and looking at all these ugly neutrons and protons and elements, which I did not understand at all, made my seconds pass like this. Tick. Tick. I could actually count them, right? So boredom is so empty of experience that your brain does not give it much storage because there is actually nothing to store. Like this, boring moments feel very long in the moment itself, but very short in retrospect. Now, we don't like boredom, right? Boredom is, per scientific definition, a very unpleasant feeling. So this is why we distract ourselves. We get out our phones every time boredom pops up in our brain, or we watch Netflix, or do whatever, like cleaning the windows, everything but being bored. And this is pretty dangerous because negative feelings always have a function. Think of pain, maybe. Pain is unpleasant too, right? But pain is a signal to your body that you should take off your hand from the hot oven. So boredom is a signal to your brain. It wants to tell you that what you are doing is empty calories, is not meaningful to you. Boring moments are very unpleasant, but we need them because this is a moment when you can question your bigger story. Boredom pushes you to start looking for purpose in your life, and purpose is what makes small things meaningful and hence memorable. Now, step number 5 is what I call the Babylonian Train, and I just recently read about it and was so thrilled about this idea. I really love it, so I'm very happy to share it now with you. The perception of time in our world is fully focused on the future. Think of like investors who seek for the trends of tomorrow, or companies who strive for innovation, or even yourself who always loves to get the newest technology to feel closer to the future. At the same time, what do you think is the most common mental illness worldwide? What is the mental illness #1 in the world? It's anxiety disorders. Anxiety disorders. There are several types of anxiety disorders, but they all have one thing in common. They are about worrying about the time to come. So we run after the future like a donkey runs after the carrot on a stick. But it doesn't have to be like this. 2000 BC in the Near East, Babylonians had an all different perspective on time. Scholars investigated Babylonian language and they made an astounding discovery. The Babylonian word for future had the very same root as the word for behind, whereas the Babylonian word for past was directly related towards like in front of you or the face. Now I think that when you hear this for the first time, it's pretty hard to imagine, right? Because in our society, we are facing the future, not the past. But imagine riding a train. When we sit in a train, we look out of the window in the direction of travel. Like this, things approach very fast, and this makes our moment right now a pretty hectic moment. This is how we view time. A Babylonian in the same train, going in the same direction, would look out of the window in the opposite direction. Like this, instead of stressing out about what's ahead, A Babylonian sees where he comes from. He can grow a past and value the past. So I really love this because I think that this could change our perspective of time, right? Going backwards to the future is what Babylonians do. Now, I was wondering, how could I translate this into my daily fasting life? And what I do is that on every last day of the month, I sit down and write just like 5 lines, a quick note on one small moment that happened to me in this month. So like this, your brain gets better and better at recognizing small moments in everyday life because it knows that at the end of the month, it has to write about one of them. I strongly recommend, if you want to try that out, that you write the last 5 lines of the year on Christmas Eve. When you sit there and you recognize that you have more than 3 moments that you can choose off to write about one of them, then congratulations, you're on a good way back to the speed of life you might still remember from your childhood when you were sitting there and counting the days till Christmas. Thank you.